This doesn't belong to you.
You made them, Hannah.
I can still hear the rip. Not a clean cut. Ripped slow, like they wanted me to feel every tear. My boarding pass, my first-class seat, right in front of 60 strangers who suddenly stopped breathing. That sound echoes in my head even now, at 67 years old, like a bad dream that won't fade with the morning light. It's the kind of noise that sticks to your bones, reminds you how fragile a man's pride can be when the world's got its foot on your neck. Folks, my name's James Harlan. I'm the founder and CEO of SkyLink Tech, a company I built from scratch back in Detroit. Started with nothing but a beat-up computer in my mama's basement and a head full of ideas about making airports safer and smarter. That was over 30 years ago. Now we supply security systems, AI check-in kiosks, and facial recognition tech to more than 40 airlines across the states. Our stuff's in every major hub, from O'Hare to LAX. It's the backbone that keeps things running smooth, spotting threats before they become problems, making sure folks get where they're going without the hassle. I've shaken hands with airline execs, testified in front of congressional committees on aviation security, and watched my company grow into something that employs hundreds of good people. But on that day, none of it mattered. I was just another black man in a suit, trying to get from point A to point B. See, I wasn't flying for business this time. No board meetings or investor pitches. I was heading to Atlanta to see my mama. She's 92 now, frail as a bird, living in the same little house where she raised me and my sisters after Daddy passed. Her health's been slipping. Doctors say it's her heart, but I know it's more than that. It's the years weighing on her, all the worries she carried for us kids. I hadn't seen her in months because work kept me chained to the desk, but after my back surgery a few weeks prior, I figured it was time. The doc said no heavy lifting, take it easy, so I splurged on a first-class ticket. Extra legroom, a quiet spot to rest my aching spine, maybe read a book or catch a nap. Simple things, right? The kind of comfort a man earns after grinding his whole life. I remember booking that ticket online, late at night in my office overlooking the Detroit skyline. The city's lights twinkled like distant stars, and I thought about how far I'd come. From sweeping floors in a factory as a teenager to running a tech firm that's worth millions. It wasn't easy. Nights without sleep, doors slammed in my face because of how I looked. But I pushed through, built something real. SkyLink Tech isn't just gadgets, it's peace of mind for travelers. Our AI catches fake IDs, flags suspicious behavior without profiling folks unfairly. I've made sure of that, drawing from my own experiences growing up in the 60s, when a wrong glance could get you in trouble. That's why I poured my soul into this company, to make the world a little fairer, one scan at a time. The morning of the flight, I woke up with that familiar twinge in my lower back, like a hot poker jabbing at me. Popped a couple of pain pills, kissed my wife goodbye. She's the rock that's held me steady for 40 years, and headed to the airport. Detroit Metro's always buzzing, even early. I parked in the long-term lot, grabbed my small carry-on, and shuffled through security. The agents there know me. One even nodded and said, "Safe travels, Mr. Harlan." Made me feel seen, you know. Like my work mattered. I grabbed a coffee, black, no sugar, just like Daddy taught me, and found a quiet bench to wait for boarding. As I sipped that bitter brew, my mind wandered back to Mama. She's the reason I push so hard. After Daddy died in a mill accident when I was 12, she worked 2 jobs, cleaning offices at night, sewing clothes during the day, to keep food on the table. "James," she'd say, her voice soft but firm, "the world's going to try to box you in, but you build your own door out." Those words stuck with me through college, through starting the company when everyone said a black kid from the projects couldn't hack it in tech. Now, here I was, flying first class to sit by her bedside, hold her hand, tell her about the grandkids she adores. It felt right, like closing a circle. Boarding started, and I lined up with the priority folks. The gate agent scanned my pass, smiled politely, and waved me through. Down the jet bridge I went, each step careful on account of my back. The plane smelled like recycled air and faint perfume, the kind that lingers from previous passengers. I found seat 2A, stowed my bag overhead, and settled in. The leather was soft, the space generous. A young flight attendant, nice kid, probably in his 20s, offered me a pre-flight drink. "Water's fine," I said, smiling back. For a moment, everything felt normal, peaceful even. I pulled out my tablet, thinking I'd check emails one last time before takeoff. But then, that's when it started. Not with a bang, but with a look. You know the kind, the one that sizes you up, questions your right to be there. Miss Reynolds, the senior flight attendant, walked by, her eyes lingering a beat too long. She was middle-aged, sharp features, uniform crisp as a new dollar bill. I caught it out of the corner of my eye, that flicker of doubt, but I brushed it off. Old habits from a lifetime of ignoring those glances. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let the hum of the engines lull me. Little did I know, that look was the spark to a fire that would burn hot and fast. They didn't know who I was, and when they found out, it wasn't me who yelled. It was the whole internet. The videos spread like wildfire, capturing every humiliating second. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This story's got layers, like an onion that makes you cry the deeper you peel. It's about more than a torn boarding pass. It's about the ache that never fully heals, the quiet rage that builds over decades. Ever been looked at like you stole the air you're breathing? If that ever happened to you, stay right here. I need to get this off my chest before it eats me alive. Sitting there in that seat, I adjusted my tie, feeling the weight of the day ahead, my mind already drifting to Mama's warm smile waiting in Atlanta. That anticipation hung over me like a soft blanket as the cabin crew bustled around, preparing for the rush of passengers. The airport had been a whirlwind earlier, crowds surging like a river in flood season, announcements crackling overhead like distant thunder, and that sharp tang of overbrewed coffee mixing with jet fuel wafting through the terminals. At my age, navigating it all felt like wading through molasses. My steps deliberate, careful not to jar the scar tissue from the surgery. But there was a lightness in my chest, a quiet buzz of excitement I hadn't felt in years, knowing I'd soon be wrapping my arms around Mama, hearing her laugh that still carried the strength of mountains despite her fragile frame. I arrived at the gate with time to spare, my carry-on rolling behind me like an old, faithful dog. The place was alive with the usual chaos. Families corralling kids with sticky fingers from snack bars, business types tapping furiously on laptops, and solo travelers like me lost in their thoughts. I found a spot near the window, watching planes taxi like giant birds preening on the tarmac. The sun glinted off their wings, and for a second, it took me back to my first flight decades ago, crammed in coach with a backpack full of dreams and a one-way ticket to opportunity. Now, here I was, ticket in hand for the front of the plane. It wasn't about showing off. It was about giving my body a break after all it had been through. When they called for pre-boarding, I stood slowly, feeling the familiar pull in my muscles. The gate agent, a young woman with a bright smile and a name tag reading Elena, scanned my barcode without a hitch. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Harlan. Have a great flight in first class," she said, her voice warm like fresh-baked bread. It caught me off guard in the best way. None of that side-eye I'd braced for. I nodded, murmuring a thank you, and made my way down the narrow walkway. the cool air from the plane's vents brushing my face as I stepped inside. The cabin was pristine, seats wide and inviting, with that new leather scent that promised a smoother ride. I eased into 2A, stowing my bag with a grunt. Damn back reminding me I wasn't 30 anymore. A flight attendant appeared almost immediately, a polite guy named Tom, according to his badge. "Sir, can I get you a warm towel or something to drink before we push back?" he asked, handing over a steaming cloth that I pressed to my face, letting the heat soak into my skin. "Just water for now, thanks," I replied, settling in deeper. The seat cradled me like an old armchair, and I allowed myself a small sigh of relief. Maybe the world had shifted a bit, I thought, remembering those hitchhiking days through the Midwest, thumb out on dusty roads, dodging stairs and worse just to get to class. Back then, first class was a fantasy. Now it was my reality, earned through sweat and late nights coding prototypes in a garage that doubled as my office. As more passengers trickled in, I watched them from my window seat. The harried mom with a toddler in tow, the suit-clad exec barking into his phone, the elderly couple holding hands like newlyweds. The engines whined to life outside, a low rumble that vibrated through the floor. Tom came by again, refilling my glass without me asking, and we exchanged a few words about the weather in Atlanta. Mild, he said. Perfect for family visits. It felt easy, natural, like I belonged there. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through photos of the grandkids to show Mama later. Little Jamal's first steps, Sarah's school play. Each image tugged at something deep inside, a mix of pride and that nagging worry about time slipping away too fast. The cabin filled up steadily, conversations murmuring like a gentle stream. I adjusted my position, crossing my legs carefully, and let my eyes close for a moment, imagining Mama's kitchen smelling of collards and cornbread. That's when Miss Reynolds passed by the first time, her footsteps clipped and efficient, clipboard in hand. She glanced my way, her gaze lingering just a hair longer than necessary, sweeping over me from head to toe. I opened my eyes, meeting hers briefly, but she kept moving without a word. No big deal, I told myself. Probably just checking seat assignments. But then she doubled back, pausing at the row ahead, her eyes flicking to the label on my seat back. The shift was subtle, a tightening around her mouth, a slight furrow in her brow. But it was there, like a cloud passing over the sun. The friendliness I'd seen in Tom was absent. Instead, something colder settled in her expression, unspoken questions hanging in the air like smoke. I straightened up a touch, my hand instinctively going to my pocket where I'd tucked my phone, wondering if this was just my imagination playing tricks after all these years. That nagging doubt crept in like fog rolling off the river at dawn, thick and unwelcome, but I pushed it aside, focusing instead on the steady thrum of voices filling the space around me. The plane was nearly full now, with folks settling into their spots, overhead bins clicking shut like punctuation marks ending hurried conversations. I shifted slightly, feeling the cool glass of the window against my shoulder, and glanced down at my watch. Takeoff in about 10 minutes. Just enough time to send a quick text to my daughter. "On the plane. Tell Grandma I'm coming." Her reply buzzed back almost instantly. "She can't wait, Dad. Safe skies." It warmed me from the inside, chasing away that fleeting chill from Miss Reynolds' stare. But then she was back, striding up the aisle with purpose, her heels tapping a rhythm that cut through the ambient chatter. She stopped right at my row, phone in one hand, the other resting on her hip like she was bracing for a storm. "Sir," she said, her voice pitched loud enough to carry to the rows behind, "this overhead compartment is designated for first-class priority storage only. I'm afraid your bag will have to be relocated to an underseat area or checked at the gate." I blinked, caught off guard, but kept my tone even, like I was explaining a simple glitch in one of my company's systems. "Ma'am, I've got my bag up there because this is my seat. 2A, first class. I can show you the confirmation if needed. I reached into my jacket pocket, pulling out the printed boarding pass I'd kept as a backup, old school habit from years of travel mishaps. Holding it out steadily, I added, "Paid the full rate online last week." She didn't take it gently. Her fingers snatched the paper with a snap, like swatting at a fly, and she held it up close to her face, squinting as if the print was in code. The cabin seemed to hush a notch, a few heads turning our way. "Well, according to our manifest," she replied, her words slicing sharp in public, "this section had a last-minute reassignment. Looks like a system error on your end. You'll need to relocate to the main cabin. There's space in row 28. My stomach tightened, a knot forming like twisted steel wire, but I stayed planted, pointing calmly at the seat number etched clear as day on the armrest. "I was one of the first to board. The gate agent confirmed it, and your colleague Tom here saw me sit down. Everyone around can vouch for that." I glanced at the nearby passengers, a young couple in 1B and 1C, an older gentleman across the aisle, who were now watching openly, their expressions a mix of curiosity and unease. Miss Reynolds let out a short, scoffing laugh that echoed unnaturally in the confined space, drawing even more eyes. "Oh, we deal with this sort of mix-up all the time, sir. Folks thinking they've snagged an upgrade when the computer's just hiccuped. Don't turn this into a scene. It's easier for everyone if you just comply and move along." Her volume hadn't dropped. If anything, it amplified, broadcasting the accusation like a loudspeaker announcement. Whispers rippled through the seats behind me, and I caught the flash of a phone screen lifting. Someone in row 3 angling their camera our way, the red record dot glowing like a warning light. The air grew thick, charged with that invisible tension that builds when a crowd senses trouble brewing. My pulse quickened, thumping in my ears like a distant drum, but I held my ground, hands folded in my lap to keep them from shaking. Another passenger pulled out their device, zooming in discreetly, while a murmur spread. "What's going on up there?" I could feel the weight of their stares, judging, waiting for the next move, but I refused to rise, my breath steady despite the storm raging inside. The murmurs swelled into a low buzz, like bees stirring in a hive, as Miss Reynolds pivoted sharply, her face flushed with a mix of authority and irritation that made her cheeks glow under the cabin lights. She pressed a button on her intercom headset, her voice booming over the speakers now, not just for me but for the entire plane to hear. "Gate supervisor to first class, please. We have a seating discrepancy that needs immediate resolution." Her words hung there, heavy and accusatory, turning every head in the front rows toward us. I felt the heat rising in my chest, a slow burn that spread to my fingertips, but I kept my expression neutral, like I'd trained myself over years of boardroom battles where one wrong twitch could cost a deal. Within moments, the supervisor appeared at the aircraft door, a lanky man in his 40s with a rumpled shirt and a tablet clutched like a shield. He hurried down the aisle, weaving past the gawking passengers, his eyes darting between Miss Reynolds and me. "What's the issue here?" he asked, his tone clipped, already scanning the manifest on his screen. Miss Reynolds thrust my boarding pass at him, her finger jabbing at it. "This passenger's in a reassigned seat. System shows a potential glitch. Could be fraud. We can't proceed until it's cleared." He tapped furiously at his device, the glow reflecting off his glasses, while the cabin held its collective breath. I leaned forward slightly, ignoring the sharp twinge in my spine, and said quietly, "Check the booking reference. It's all there. Purchase directly through your app." But Miss Reynolds cut in, her volume spiking again. "We've seen these tricks before. Fake upgrades, stolen credentials. It's a security risk to the whole flight." The supervisor's brow furrowed as data loaded, and after what felt like an eternity, he looked up. "Records confirm seat 2A for Mr. Harlan. No reassignment flagged." A ripple of relief washed over me, brief as a summer rain, but Miss Reynolds wasn't having it. She crossed her arms, shaking her head vehemently. That can't be right. Our onboard protocol overrides if there's any doubt. Possible fraud alert. We can't risk it with takeoff imminent. Call security. Let's get this sorted on the ground. Her insistence hit like a slap, amplifying the drama, and now more phones were out. Lenses trained on the unfolding scene like spotlights in a theater. The young couple nearby exchanged uneasy glances, one whispering, "This is getting crazy," while the older gentleman across from me shifted uncomfortably, his newspaper forgotten in his lap. Security arrived fast. 2 officers, broad-shouldered and uniformed, stepping aboard with the kind of presence that silenced the remaining chatter. The lead one, a stern woman with a radio crackling at her belt, addressed Miss Reynolds first. "Situation?" Miss Reynolds pointed at me, her narrative spilling out in rapid fire. "Unverified passenger in premium seating. Boarding pass might be compromised. Refusing to relocate." The officer turned to me, her eyes appraising. "Sir, we'll need you to gather your belongings and step off the aircraft for verification." My heart slammed against my ribs, a wild rhythm that drowned out the engine's idle whine outside. The pain in my back flared as I gripped the armrests, forcing myself to stand slowly, each movement deliberate to avoid showing weakness. "Officers, this is a mistake," I said, my voice steady but laced with the gravel of frustration. "I've got confirmation emails, credit card receipts, everything." But the second officer was already motioning for my bag, pulling it down from the overhead with a thud that echoed my sinking spirit. Miss Reynolds stepped back, but not before broadcasting one more barb to the audience. "Folks, we're delaying departure because certain individuals believe the rules are optional. Apologies for the inconvenience." Her announcement sparked a wave of reactions, a groan from the back, a nod of agreement from a middle-aged man in row 4 who muttered loudly enough for all to hear, "Yeah, just get on with it already. Some of us have places to be." His words stung like salt in a fresh cut, fueling the growing chorus of impatience that painted me as the villain in this impromptu drama. As the officers flanked me, guiding me toward the exit, the forest of cell phones followed, capturing every humiliating shuffle. I walked the aisle like a man on trial, head high but insides churning, the stares boring into me from all sides. Whispers turned to outright comments. "What's he done?" from one seat. "Probably tried to sneak up front," from another. The young couple averted their eyes, but the older gentleman met mine with a flicker of sympathy that did little to ease the knot in my gut. Step by step, the jet bridge loomed ahead, cold and impersonal, each footfall dragging me further into a nightmare I never saw coming. The tunnel of the jet bridge swallowed me whole, its metallic walls closing in like the jaws of some indifferent beast, amplifying every echo of my labored breaths and the officers' boots thudding behind. We emerged into the bright glare of the terminal, where the crowd at the gate parted like a sea before a storm, their faces a blur of shock and morbid fascination. "Sit here while we sort this," the lead officer grunted, pointing to a row of hard plastic chairs bolted to the floor near the counter. I lowered myself gingerly, the seat cold against my thighs, my torn boarding pass clutched in one fist like a worthless relic. The officers hovered nearby, radios squawking with updates, while the gate agent avoided my gaze, typing furiously into her computer as if it could erase the mess unfolding. Minutes stretched into an eternity, the terminal's fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like angry insects, casting harsh shadows that made everything feel sharper, more unforgiving. "No flights for me today," the agent finally muttered, system lockdown on my booking pending full review. "Next available is tomorrow morning, sir. We'll email a voucher." A voucher! Like that could patch the hole ripping wider in my chest with each passing second. My phone vibrated relentlessly in my pocket, an insistent buzz that matched the chaos swirling in my head. I pulled it out, screen lighting up with notifications, texts from my assistant, alerts from social media apps I barely used. Mr. Harlan, videos are exploding online, one message read. Over 1 million views already. Reporters calling the office. I stared at the words, numb, the device heavy in my palm like a loaded gun I didn't want to fire. How had it spread so fast? Those passenger phones capturing my walk of shame, turning a private indignity into public spectacle. I opened one link she sent, a shaky clip on some news aggregator site, watching myself on that tiny screen, standing awkwardly, voice calm but eyes betraying the storm inside. Comments scrolled beneath. Typical entitlement, one said. Airlines gotta protect paying customers. Another, a few defended. This looks wrong. Check the facts. But the hate drowned them out, each word a fresh jab to my gut. The terminal flowed around me like a river indifferent to a single stone. Passengers rushing to other gates with their roller bags clacking, announcements droning about delays and final calls. A family hurried past, the kids glancing my way with wide eyes, their parents whispering and steering them clear. An older woman slowed, her face softening with pity, shaking her head before moving on. But then came the smirks, a group of young guys in hoodies, one nudging the other. That's the dude from the video. Tried to scam his way up front. Their laughter hit like shards of glass, low but piercing, making my skin crawl. I hunched forward, elbows on knees, trying to shrink into invisibility, but the stares kept coming, turning me into an exhibit in some cruel zoo. My thumb hovered over the call button for my daughter, Sarah. She picked up on the first ring, her voice bright at first. Dad, you in the air yet? Then cracking when I explained, the words tumbling out in a hoarse whisper. They pulled me off, baby girl. Said it was a mix-up, but it felt like more. Silence on her end, then a sharp intake of breath, followed by sobs she couldn't hide. I'm booking a flight right now, Dad. I'll be there in hours. Her protectiveness, fierce like her mother's, twisted the knife deeper. No, don't, I managed, my own throat tightening. I'm handling it. Just worn out, that's all. Tell Grandma I'll make it tomorrow. We hung up, her protests echoing in my ears, leaving me adrift in the sea of strangers. 67 years on this earth, I thought, staring at the scuffed floor tiles, each one a reminder of battles fought and won. I'd clawed my way from shining shoes on street corners, dodging insults and worse, to building an empire that safeguarded millions in the skies. SkyLink Tech, my life's work, algorithms that spotted dangers without bias, systems that treated everyone equal. And yet here I sat, reduced to that same boy again, polishing boots for pennies while folks walked by without a second glance. The irony burned like acid. My tech probably powered the very scanners that let me through security, but it couldn't shield me from this raw, human ugliness. Tears pricked at my eyes, hot and unwelcome. I blinked them back, refusing to break here, in this fluorescent purgatory where every glance felt like judgment. Time blurred, the crowd thinning as my original flight pushed back without me, its roar fading into the distance like a mocking farewell. My phone kept pinging, more views, more shares, the story morphing into something viral and vicious. A news alert popped up. Passenger removed from flight amid fraud claims. Video goes viral. My face splashed across the thumbnail, frozen in that moment of disbelief. I powered it down, the screen going black like a mercy, but the weight in my chest remained, a crushing anchor pulling me under waves of exhaustion and quiet fury. With that digital curtain drawn, the terminal's clamor rushed back in full force. A cacophony of rolling suitcases and muffled pages that did nothing to drown the thunder in my veins. I sat there, statue still amid the flux, my mind a whirlwind of fractured memories. Daddy's calloused hands teaching me to stand tall against the wind. Mama's whispers about turning the other cheek without losing your soul. But this? This was a gale that stripped away layers I'd built over decades, leaving me raw and exposed under the unblinking eyes of passers-by who now recognized the man from the trending storm. The vibrations started up again almost immediately, my phone defying its shutdown like a heartbeat refusing to quit. I relented, powering it back on, the screen igniting with a barrage of alerts that hit like rapid-fire punches. 4 million views in under 2 hours, the footage splintering across platforms like shattered glass. Hashtags blazed. Hash first class, fraud twisting the knife with its mockery. Hash airline bias surging as a rallying cry, pulling in voices from every corner of the net. Comments flooded in waves. Outrage from strangers who'd walked in my shoes. Venom from those who saw only a disruption to their day. My assistant's call cut through the noise, her voice urgent and clipped over the line. "Boss, it's chaos here," she said, words tumbling fast. "FAA reps are on the horn, sniffing around protocols. The airline's in meltdown mode. Turns out we handle 60% of their facial rec and AI check-ins. Execs are scrambling, asking if this ties back to our systems." I could picture her at the desk, screens glowing with crisis maps, her loyalty a anchor in the squall. But I didn't bite, didn't unleash the commands that could have escalated it all. No frantic calls to contacts, no leveraging the leverage. Instead, I murmured, "Let it ride, Carla. The truth's got legs of its own." Hanging up, I leaned back against the unyielding chair, letting the viral beast roam free, its roar building in the ether. Footsteps approached then, soft and tentative amid the terminal's din, a young black woman, maybe late 20s, with braids tied back and a backpack slung over one shoulder. She must have been from the flight. Her eyes held that fresh memory of the scene, wide with a fire I recognized from my own youth. She stopped a few feet away, glancing at the empty seats around me before perching on the edge of one. "Sir," she said, her tone low but fierce, like a spark in dry tinder, "I was in row 5, saw the whole damn thing go down. I got it all on video, from her snatching your pass to the security haul out. Uploading the unedited cut right now. They think they can bury this? Not on my watch." Her words ignited something dormant. A shift from the suffocating despair to a steely resolve that straightened my spine despite the ache. She showed me her screen, fingers flying as the file transferred to a cloud share. Hashtags already tagged for maximum blast. "Name's Aisha," she added, meeting my gaze with unyielding solidarity. "My grandma went through worse in the 70s. Bus rides turned nightmares. Can't let history loop like that." In that moment, the isolation cracked, her act a bridge over the chasm of hurt. I didn't need boardroom clout or ownership stakes to strike back. The world's eyes, amplified by pixels and outrage, were weapon enough. As the upload bar filled, a quiet fire kindled within. I just needed the truth to soar, exposing the rot for all to see. That inner spark flickered brighter as Aisha's upload completed with a soft chime, the video hurtling into the digital wilds where it could no longer be contained or ignored. The terminal's sterile hum faded into the background, replaced by a surge of determination that coursed through me like electricity in a storm-chased wire, grounding the chaos into something purposeful. I thanked her with a nod, our shared glance a silent pact forged in the heat of injustice. And as she slipped away into the crowd, my phone erupted anew, not with venomous comments this time, but with urgent voicemails from numbers I recognized all too well. Airline brass, scrambling like ants under a lifted rock. The first call came from the airline's regional director, his voice tinny and breathless over the speaker. "Mr. Harlan, this is Mark Thompson from operations. We've seen the footage. It's everywhere. Our team's in damage control, but we need to speak with you immediately." I let it ring to voicemail, buying time to steady my breathing, the weight of the moment pressing down like gravity amplified. But before I could pocket the device, another buzz. The CEO himself, a man I'd met at industry conferences, his polished demeanor now cracked with panic. "James, it's Richard Hale. Please pick up. This is a catastrophe. We had no idea." I answered that one, my tone measured, a blade sheathed but ready. "Richard," I said, the name hanging like a verdict. "You know who I am now? I take it." On the other end, a pause, thick with calculation, then a rush of apologies. "We do, and we're horrified. The attendant's actions were unacceptable. We're offering full compensation, a substantial settlement, lifetime first-class privileges, anything to make this right." His words poured out like oil on troubled waters, slick and desperate, but they slid off me without sticking. Money? Perks? Those were bandages on a wound that ran soul deep, insults to the dignity I'd fought a lifetime to claim. As we spoke, the terminal stirred with fresh energy, a suited figure striding through the gates, flanked by two aides clutching tablets like lifelines. It was the airline's local executive, face ashen as fresh-fallen snow, sweat beading on his brow despite the air-conditioned chill. He spotted me instantly, weaving through the thinning throng with the urgency of a man racing a ticking clock. "Mr. Harlan," he gasped, extending a hand I didn't take. "I'm here in person. The board's looped in. This has gone nuclear. 4 million views. It's trending nationwide. FAA's breathing down our necks about protocol breaches." The drama unfolded in real time. The executive pulling up a chair beside me, his aides hovering like shadows, as passengers nearby paused their routines to eavesdrop. Richard stayed on the line, conferencing in, his voice echoing tinnily from the speaker. "James, name your terms. We fire the attendant on the spot. Done. Public apology drafted and ready to post." Their concessions came fast. A barrage of offers meant to douse the flames. 6 figures in restitution, upgraded status for life, even a personal escort on future flights. But I waved them off, my voice rising not in anger, but in unyielding clarity, each word a hammer strike forging change from the wreckage. "No cash," I countered, the quiet fire now a steady blaze. "No freebies that let you buy silence. Here's what I demand. First, every scrap of video, from passengers, security cams, all of it, becomes required viewing in your training programs. Not optional seminars, but mandatory modules for every employee, from gate agents to pilots. Show them what bias looks like in action, how it poisons the air we all breathe." The executive nodded furiously, tapping notes into his device, while Richard murmured assent over the line. "Second," I pressed on, leaning forward with the weight of my company's legacy behind me, "integrate SkyLink's bias detection AI into your check-in kiosks and gate systems. Free for the first 2 years. My gift to ensure this never happens again. It'll flag unfair patterns before they escalate. Protect folks who look like me from being profiled as threats." A hush fell over our impromptu huddle, the aides exchanging wide-eyed glances as the implications sank in. My tech wasn't just bells and whistles. It was a safeguard I'd engineered precisely for moments like this. Algorithms tuned to detect disparities without mercy. Richard hesitated, the line crackling with his internal calculus, cost, implementation, pride. But the viral storm left no room for haggling. "Agreed," he finally choked out. "We'll fast-track the rollout." I wasn't done. Third, set up an independent oversight program for discrimination claims. Third-party auditors, quarterly public reports on incidents and resolutions. Transparency, Richard, not lip service. Make your airline a model or watch the fallout bury you deeper. The negotiations blurred into a frenzy, their team huddling with frantic whispers and urgent calls back to headquarters. The terminal's clock ticking like a bomb fuse. Passers-by slowed, some snapping discreet photos, feeding the beast that had turned my humiliation into a national spectacle. Within the hour, they caved. Full agreement scrawled on a makeshift memo, signed digitally right there. Miss Reynolds' termination hit the wires immediately, her name scrubbed from rosters as security escorted her from the premises amid a smattering of jeers from lingering witnesses. The airline's social channels lit up with a crafted mea culpa. We deeply regret the incident involving Mr. James Harlan. Actions have been taken, and we're committed to systemic reform. As the dust settled, they ushered me toward a later flight. First class again, but the victory tasted like ash on my tongue. I boarded with leaden steps, the cabin's luxury now a hollow shell, my heart heavy with the scars of the day. Sinking into the seat, I stared out at the runway lights blurring into streaks, the triumph overshadowed by a profound weariness that no apology could lift. The aircraft lurched forward then, tires rumbling over the tarmac like a reluctant giant awakening, building speed until the ground fell away in a stomach-dropping rush that mirrored the tumult still churning inside me. I pressed my forehead against the cool pane, watching the city lights below splinter into a mosaic of forgotten lives, each pinprick a story untold, a battle unseen. Mama's face floated in my thoughts. Her wrinkled hands that had mended my clothes and my spirit alike, now waiting in that quiet Atlanta home where time moved slower than the clouds drifting past. And Sarah, my fierce girl, her voice still echoing with that mix of rage and love from our call. How would I explain this to her without the bitterness seeping through? Not just my ordeal, but the countless others without a viral shield. Folks ground down daily by the same invisible grind, their voices lost in the roar of indifference. As the plane banked into the darkening sky, altitude pressing against my ears like unspoken regrets, I traced the horizon where earth met void, pondering the fragile threads that bind us all. Power doesn't always thunder from podiums or echo in courtrooms. Sometimes it's the stubborn pulse in your veins, the refusal to vanish into the statistics. Other times, it's unleashing facts like arrows from a bow, letting them pierce the veil higher than any jet stream, exposing cracks in the facade we all pretend is solid. If the shade of your skin has ever shrunk you down to nothing in a room full of eyes, speak it out loud to someone who will listen. Grab that phone, hit record if the moment turns sour. Don't let it swallow you whole. One hushed voice clutching a shredded ticket can reshape the heavens for those coming after. Share your scars in the comments if this hits home. I pore over each one, drawing strength from the shared ache. You're not drifting solo in this vast blue. And if my tale stirred something raw in you, give it a thumbs up. Sign on for more if these old bones have tales worth hearing. I've got years left to spin them. Lessons etched in every wrinkle.